VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Friends, thank you for joining us today as we take a look at the impact of illegal immigration. Officers serving under ICE are regularly being vilified by the media, by community activists, and by politicians without regard for the magnitude of the work that they're doing to make our nation safe. I mean, virtually every day I receive an email from the Department of Homeland Security with a listing of the arrest of what they call the worst of the worst. And I'd like to just share with you just a few of these from this past Monday alone of what occurred over the weekend where many were engrossed in watching the World Cup. Here's who ICE was arresting. A criminal alien, illegal alien from Vietnam, convicted for first-degree murder in Lexington, Oklahoma. A criminal illegal alien from Vietnam, convicted for murder, driving while intoxicated, and aggravated assault in Santa Ana, California. A criminal illegal alien from Nicaragua, convicted for rape, sodomy with person under 14 years of age, and false imprisonment in San Mateo, California. A criminal illegal alien from Guatemala convicted for sex assault of a child in Denver, Colorado. A criminal illegal alien from Brazil convicted for aggravated assault, dangerous weapon on a child under 14 years of age in Gardner, Massachusetts. A criminal illegal alien from El Salvador convicted for assault with a deadly weapon, intent to kill or inflict serious injury in Guilford County, North Carolina. Then, a criminal illegal alien from Vietnam, convicted for aggravated assault with intent to murder in Madison Heights, Michigan. A criminal illegal alien from Mexico, convicted for assault with a deadly weapon, driving under the influence and corporal injury to a spouse, and that in San Luis Obispo, California. Then also a criminal illegal alien from Cuba, convicted for aggravated battery, resisting an officer, criminal mischief, and aggravated battery causing bodily harm or disability in Tampa, Florida. Folks, the list goes on. It goes on, and that's just from this past weekend. And yet, when ICE shoot a person who is attempting to ram them with their vehicle, the media, community activists, and many politicians become unglued. They stay silent, though, when a person who's here illegally kills others on the roadway or rape innocent victims. That occurs, or it may make the news for one news cycle, and then it vanishes. Friends, something is not right. We've got a lot to talk about today, including the ICE traffic stops, expedited removals by DHS, the duration of status change, the impact of birthright citizenship decision from the Supreme Court, non-citizens voting, and the cost of illegal immigration. Joining us, we welcome back Mark Krikorian, who is a nationally recognized expert on immigration issues. He is the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. They're an independent, nonpartisan research organization that examines and critiques the impact of immigration on the United States, both legal and illegal immigration. He has testified many times before Congress and has published articles on many outlets. Mark, thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
Glad to be here.
So, Mark, I'm sure you see the releases that come out regularly from Department of Homeland Security. I mean, the media is mum regarding these stories of how ICE is protecting the citizens in our country, but they go ballistic when an agent fires at a driver seeking to run them down.
Yeah, and the thing, with this, these people trying to run down ICE agents is that this is being incited by these Democratic politicians who are saying that, ICE officers are illegitimate, they're Gestapo, immigration law is immoral in itself, and so it's kind of giving permission to people who might otherwise have basically complied with law enforcement to do, the kind of thing they're doing, trying to run over ICE agents. It's really appalling.
It is, and again, they are just totally mum at all the bad guys that they are apprehending and deporting out of the country, and the people have no idea as to who they are being spared from.
Yeah, I mean that's very true. And in fact, the sort of louder voices on the other side reject the very idea of deporting people. Mm-hmm. In other words, that if there's a criminal, and maybe, and they probably won't even concede this, but the criminal goes to jail, who's an illegal alien, that's fine. But when he's released, when he's done, what's supposed to happen is the prison hands the person over to ICE. And it's a very widespread view now among Democrats that, no, when the person finishes a criminal sentence, if he's an illegal alien, he should just be released back into the community.
Yeah.
That's what sanctuary laws are all about.
And tragically, that's what they're about. Mark, ICE has also just been blamed because a man was fleeing them in Florida, and he ran out on the highway, foolishly out onto the highway, killed by a semi-truck that was driving through, and ICE is at blame? I mean, go figure.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the kind of thing that, again, Democratic opposition to immigration enforcement basically is telling people, and I'm talking about regular people, not gangbangers and stuff, that you are justified in resisting or at least fleeing law enforcement. Whereas, in different circumstances, this guy, if, for instance, he was driving and there was a flashing light he saw in his rearview mirror, he might be much more inclined to just pull over and, get his license and his registration to show to the officer, because most people are going to be willing to comply with law enforcement unless you have people like AOC and the rest of them telling them that it's okay not to.
Yeah. Well, there was a pause on ICE traffic stops, and then that pause was lifted, and some indicates some modifications were made. Mark, I know you recently spoke with Tom Homan, the border czar. What can you tell us about the ICE traffic stops?
Yeah, I interviewed Tom Homan recently at the White House, and it's the whole interview is there on our website at cis.org. And what he said about the traffic stops was that this wasn't some kind of change in policy. It was, the kind of thing you do out of prudence to see if there was an issue there. But the president, it was the DHS Secretary Mullen who ordered the halt to traffic stops, and the president then basically overruled him. I'm not even sure what the current situation is. As I understand it, they are saying you do traffic stops, but only if at least one of the officers has a body cam. And body cams are actually a good thing because the spread of them among regular law enforcement, local police, has actually strengthened the case for local police. In other words, without them, you'd have these activists saying, the Gestapo police officers did such and such. And then you watch the body cam, and the suspects they're trying to take into custody are crazy people coming at them with knives and guns.
Yeah.
And so, as I understand it, traffic stops are allowed as long as at least one of the officers has a body cam. That could be changed from when I heard it, but that's what I had heard.
Why are not body cams universal?
Well, there is money for them. The reason, and this is something Homan had said in a different interview, is that they were having, held up by the government shutdowns, because the government shutdowns meant that the ICE agents were still working, but all of the support stuff was not funded. And, we're talking about thousands and thousands of these things, and then you have to be trained how to use them. So it's a kind of a logistical issue. It's not a resistance to body cams. They're all ICE agents want to have them.
And it's not just the camera itself. It's all the backup and the software and the storage for all of this data that's flowing into them.
Exactly. And this is the reason you have to have all that data, is that you're going to have thousands of what they call FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests from lawyers and activists. And you need to have, armies of people to respond to all of these requests. Yeah. So there's a lot involved. It's not just you have the little thing on your body armor and you have the camera on there. There's a whole tail, as it were, of logistical support that has to go with that. So, they're getting more and more body cams out there, but, it's not something you can snap your fingers and do overnight.
No, and it was hampered by the government shutdown that was done by liberals.
Right.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's also just talk about the the ICE mask, and there are communities such as my home city of Milwaukee, and ICE has had involvement in Milwaukee in making apprehensions, and there's a big uprising, and the city council passed an ordinance forbidding ICE agents to wear masks in the city of Milwaukee. That mask issue has been upheld, though, by the courts, have they not, to allow ICE agents to do that for their own safety and protection?
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, just to begin with, local and state jurisdictions can't tell federal law enforcement what to do one way or the other. So that ordinance in Milwaukee, and there are similar things elsewhere, is meaningless. I mean, It's just for show. But the question is, why are they doing it? Sure, I'd much rather have our law enforcement not have to do this. But ICE agents' families and children are being threatened by these activists that are being supported by Democratic congressmen. They have very good reason to want to protect their identity in the same way that you see in Latin America, anti-drug cops have to wear the same exact kind of mask for the same reason, because criminals will threaten them and their families. And that's exactly what is happening here. Criminals whom Democratic politicians, either openly or, de facto, are supporting, are threatening the lives of ICE agents and their children. And so, of course, they're going to wear masks.
You know, how ironic it was when I saw somebody protesting ICE and protesting the fact that the ICE has masks on. They should not. Their identity should be revealed. But this person refused to go on camera to say that for fear that there would be retribution against them. And it's like, you just made the point.
Yep, absolutely. So, I mean, again, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have law enforcement wouldn't have to wear masks. Unfortunately, we don't live in that world right now.
Yeah. Let's get into another issue that's really surfaced recently, and there are so many across this nation concerned about election integrity, and many have said that, there is nothing but a conspiracy theory out there that illegal immigrants, they don't vote. Well, lo and behold, we just had the Democratic governor of New Jersey, Governor Sherrill, who has just confessed that her state registered about 6,600 non-citizens to vote between June of 2023 and June of 2024, and 6% of them voted. I mean, now that's one governor, Mark, eating crow.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question this happens. And, while they say, well, the number isn't that big, how big does it have to be in a close election? And it doesn't even matter in the sense of whether it affects the election. It's the principle of the thing.
Right.
Elections are for American citizens, and there are lots of immigrants who are American citizens because they've gone through the naturalization process, and more power to them. But if you're not a citizen, what are you doing voting? And I have to say that in many cases, this is not the immigrants' fault. This is the fault of Congress's motor voter bill that was passed years ago, which requires state DMVs to give voter registration information to people when they come and get a driver's license. And look, if you're a guy from Honduras, you have a third-grade education, I'm not saying you're stupid, but you're not sophisticated about the way these things work. You're not reading the fine print. Somebody from the government gave you a form. Oh, I guess it's okay. I don't know. And so you sign it. And so in a sense, they're bad actors. There's no question. But our policy also is creating the conditions where people can do these illegal things almost without knowing what they're doing wrong.
Friends, we had a break right here. Mark Krikorian with us. We'll be back in a minute on Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geologist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, did the animals that we see fossilized today live millions and millions of years ago?
Chris, according to evolution, they did, but I question that. First, note that most of the fossils are nearly identical to modern-day organisms. There are clams in the fossil record, and there are clams today. Maybe a little bit different, but still clams. Theologically, if the fossils died long ago, then what does that do to the biblical teaching that things were very good in the beginning? Did things die and experience pain before God called things very good? No, in the beginning there was no death. It was Adam's sin which brought the wages of sin, which is death. If death existed before sin, then death is not the penalty for sin, and Christ's death paid no penalty. Chris, recent creation is absolutely essential, even to the salvation doctrine. As we go back to Genesis, we can get it right.
This is Chris O'Brien. Thanks for going back to Genesis.
Mark Krikorian is with us today here on Crosstalk. He is the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. Their website, CIS.org. Friends, if I'd encourage you to sign up for their releases as they come out. They're so informative. They really have a handle on what's happening with immigration, more than I've seen from any other group, and keeps you informed. You watch that interview with Tom Homan as well, CIS.org. So, Mark, we were talking about this motor voter registration, and the governor there in New Jersey, and again, just having to take some steps back. Yes, indeed, it's they did find that they have 6,600 non-citizens that were signed up to vote, but this was just a computer glitch or a software glitch. That's something we hear often in that regard. But I'm confident New Jersey is not the only place where this is happening.
Oh no, certainly not. And I'll take the governor at her word that it was a software glitch, but these things always seem to go the same way. They always, any accidents or glitches like this end up serving the interest of the left almost without exception. So, even if it was a software glitch, it's still on them because this shouldn't be permitted. Elections are for Americans. Americans decide what our government does. And the problem is that in too many of these blue states, they're kind of frivolous and flippant about this problem of non-citizens on the voter rolls or actually voting, and they need to take this more seriously.
How critical do you believe this Save America Act is, that only U.S. citizens can vote in federal elections?
Well, it's already law that only U.S. citizens can vote. What the Save Act is designed to do is make people present evidence of proof of citizenship when they register to vote, and then actually show a photo ID when they show up to vote. And photo ID it's one of these no-brainers. Majority of Democratic voters, Republican voters, white, black, men, women, everybody's for it. It's like obvious. I mean, you go anything you do, you have to show your ID. There was this, I don't know if you saw this. This may have been an online thing.
Olive Garden.
Olive Garden,
yes.
Yeah. The restaurant Olive Garden has some deal where you can buy like unlimited pasta for like a year or whatever it is, and you have to have a card that you show the waiter. And they're like, no, you have to have ID, photo ID to show it's you.
Yep.
So it's harder, it's easier to vote in some states than it is to get the unlimited pasta bowl at Olive Garden. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And friends, just think about it. I mean, if Olive Garden requires photo ID of a person qualified to eat their never-ending pasta bowl, should we not think it's more important for photo ID in our nation's elections? And that's just a case in point. Check out a book from a library. Get rid of waste motor oil at a recycling yard. Show photo ID to show who you are, and getting some certain medications at the pharmacy, and the list goes on and on. So, Mark, why is it such a tough issue for, well, especially the U.S. Senate to pass it when the American people at large, I mean, we're talking Republican, Democrat, Independent, are in favor of it?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, I think the bill had too much in it. In other words, if it was just, okay, every state, if you're going to have a federal election, federal law requires you to have people show photo ID, and just did that and nothing else, it would have been a lot harder for the Democrats to oppose. They still would have been against it because they want people to vote, even if they're not eligible to vote. I mean, those people who aren't eligible to vote are disproportionately voting for Democrats if they're voting. So it's two things. There's a political interest on the part of Democrats. They want to keep ineligible voters on the rolls. And I think it was a mistake on the part of the Republicans in trying to overreach instead of just pick one thing that the Democrats are totally on the wrong side of, that one thing, and just drive it through.
So that's pending again in the Senate. The House has passed it again?
Yeah, the House has passed it, and I don't see the Senate passing it because there's even several Republicans or so-called Republicans. Murkowski from Alaska, for instance, has said she won't vote for it. And with a narrow majority, even in the Senate, they have 53 Republican senators. And, then there's the issue of the filibuster, too. I don't think it's going to pass the Senate.
Earlier, we spoke about, by the way, folks, if you want to reach out to your senators, you can do so to share your opinion on the legislation. It's 202-224-3121. That's the Senate switchboard, and you can ask to be connected to your U.S. senators. You have two that represent you, and you can be connected to their offices. You can also go to senate.gov, look up their information, and convey the message that you want to convey to your U.S. senators. Mark, we spoke a bit ago about the border czar, Tom Homan, and he is proposing a major expansion of I-9 employment verification inspections. What is he proposing?
The background is, and everybody who's gotten a job will know this, when you get a job, you fill out the paperwork for Social Security and IRS, and one of the things you fill out is what's called an I-9, the letter I-9 form. And what that is you're proving both who you are and that you are eligible to work in the United States. Usually people show a driver's license and Social Security card. You could show a passport if you want. There's different things people do. Mm-hmm. Well, the point of that is to make sure people are only companies are hiring legal workers, Americans or foreigners who have the right to work. The thing is that obviously there's lots of illegal aliens who are using fake IDs or stolen or whatever. In fact, we estimate most illegal immigrants who are working on the books. And so when I asked Tom Homan about this, one of the things he said is that what he would like to do, and I didn't get a clear answer about whether this is something that he's going to be allowed to do or not, but what he wanted to do is hire contractors, in other words, people who aren't fully trained and therefore highly paid law enforcement officers, just regular kind of people do clerical work, to go through I-9, to do audits, basically, of companies' I-9 forms. And then when something, red flag comes up, forward that on to ICE so they could look into it. That's the kind of thing we need a lot more of, work-related enforcement, whether it's a raid on a work site or whether it's just paperwork audits. You can't get significant reductions in the illegal population just going after violent criminals or even any kind of criminals, because most illegal immigrants, yes, they've almost all committed multiple crimes, but most of them aren't public safety threats. They're just ordinary schmoes doing work like anybody else. If you're going to get them out of the country, you need to make it impossible for them to get and keep jobs. And if I had one objection to what ICE has been doing, it's that. They haven't been doing enough work-related, job-related enforcement.
We're talking today with Mark Krikorian for the Center for Immigration Studies. Mark, DHS recently finalized this regulation that will rescind the Biden administration's 2022 public charge rule. What is that rule, and what is the change under the Trump administration?
This is something Trump tried to do in the first administration. They're hopefully finally getting it done now. And what public charge means, it's like the kind of a archaic legal term. What it means is you're an immigrant who's living off the government. In other words, you're getting welfare. And the point of the public charge rule is to keep out or to not give green cards or citizenship to foreigners who can't pay their own bills, basically using welfare. Mm-hmm. And under an old rule that the Clinton administration put into effect and Biden preserved and protected, was that even though that's what the law requires, they defined welfare so narrowly that it didn't cover. In other words, it didn't exclude most illegal immigrants who are using welfare. And so what the Trump administration knew the rule did, and what they recently did was withdraw the old rule and put in place a new rule, is that they're counting many more welfare programs, including Medicare and things like that, which they weren't counting before, Medicaid, rather, use of those by an immigrant as classifying you as a public charge, as somebody living off of taxpayer largesse. And it's very important because probably it's unlikely immigrants come here to get welfare, but they are using it at very high rates. The majority of immigrant-headed households are using at least one federal welfare program. And reining that in is an important part of both deterring future illegal immigration and also encouraging self-deportation by people who are already here and are benefiting from taxpayer benefits.
Does that include SNAP?
Yes, it does. And it did not before. In other words, the rule that they withdrew only counted cash. If you got a check, that was counted as getting welfare. If you were living in public housing, getting Medicaid and food stamps, you were considered self-supporting under this ridiculous old rule.
Wow.
And so they finally did away with that, and hopefully they're going to make that stick.
So DHS not only made that rule change, but also the duration of status rule for students, exchange visitors, and foreign media. Tell us about that rule and that change.
Yeah, that especially is going to affect foreign students because that's the biggest category there. And the way it works, if you have a temporary visa, in other words, you're not coming here on a green card to be an immigrant and live here permanently. You're on some kind of temporary visa. Usually what happens is you get a fixed amount of time to be here, at the end of which you need to leave. A lot of people don't. They become visa overstayers. They're illegal aliens that way. But they have this period of stay, it's called. Well, for foreign students, they had what was called duration of status, which means they got to stay here as long as they were still students without any fixed period of time. So the government had never had any chance, never had any opportunity to kind of take another look and see what they're doing. It was kind of almost an open-ended access to the United States. And just recently, Senator Schmidt from Missouri tweeted something out about a Jordanian foreign student who had been an undergraduate for 15 years.
Oh, my.
And finally, they've ordered him deported in the court, whatever it was. He's apparently on his way out. But that's the kind of thing that this rule is designed to prevent. Now, if you're a PhD student and you're here for 4 years, but you need another 2 years to complete your research, well, then you just apply and they give it to you. But the point is they get another bite at the apple and see who you are you complying, or have you been an undergraduate for 15 years?
Yeah.
And they'll say, no, you got to get out.
My. Also, we just had a court in D.C. Uphold the constitutionality of the expansion of the expedited removal. Tell us about that.
Expedited removal is something Congress wrote into the law in 1996. And just like it sounds, it's to expedite the removal of illegal aliens, to make it quicker and to limit the number of bites at the apple an illegal immigrant can get. Because basically every level of appeal an illegal immigrant can engage in just gets him what he wants, which is to be able to stay in the United States longer.
Right.
And so with expedited removal, Congress said that it can apply to any illegal immigrant who is apprehended within 2 years of his coming in the United States. The thinking there is after that they may have started to put down roots and the government would have to show, go through a little more. Nobody ever used the full authority, and all the Trump administration did is said, we're going to now do the full extent of what Congress has allowed us to do.
A quick break here, friends. After the break with Mark Krikorian here, we're going to get into this aspect of birthright citizenship and the impact of the Supreme Court decision on that. Stay with us. You're listening to Crosstalk.
As parents, we strategize and agonize. Our children bring indescribable joy, but there are also incredible challenges and sometimes heartbreak. We wish for secret formulas to raise and guide our children, but somewhere along the way we discover that what our kids need most is for God to do in their lives what only He can do. In the book, The 1 Year Praying Through the Bible for Your Kids is designed to provide you with a daily dose of parenting perspective and hope. Day by day, you'll find yourself worrying less and praying more as your dreams and desire for your children is shaped by the Scriptures. This book guides you to let go of fear and expect God to work as you pray for your children. The 1 year Praying Through the Bible for Your Kids. Available for a donation of $20 when you call VCY America. 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Mark Krikorian is with us from the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS.org. And friends, in a short while, we'll be opening up phone lines, so be ready to participate. Jump in right away with your questions for our guest here today. But I do want to cover this aspect of birthright citizenship. Mark, this is a case that went before the United States Supreme Court. We saw at the end of June, they came forth with their decision and basically denying President Trump the ability to change what many refer to as birth tourism here in our nation. So give us your reaction to the SCOTUS decision known as birthright citizenship.
The president, through executive order, was trying to change the rules so that kids born here to illegal immigrants or temporary visitors wouldn't automatically get citizenship, which is the way it is now. He was never going to win that case because it's just not something you can do just with an executive order. It wasn't even an executive order. It was just like a memo or something. The problem with the decision was that by a 5-4 majority, a one-vote majority, the Supreme Court said even Congress isn't allowed to change the rules, that it would require a constitutional amendment to do that. And that was overreach, in my opinion. In other words, if they had said, look, the president can't do this, but if Congress passes a law changing the way we think of citizenship at birth, then we'll look at what they pass if it comes to us again in a new lawsuit. They said, no, it's in the Constitution that the 14th Amendment, which was designed to ensure citizenship for newly freed blacks in the South, so that when the Union Army withdrew, the states there wouldn't just strip them of their citizenship. That was the point of the 14th Amendment. That 14th Amendment also requires us to give automatic citizenship to any Russian tourist flying into Miami, any Chinese tourist in L.A., or any illegal alien who has a kid here, just ran over the border and had the kid. Mm-hmm. It's a terrible decision. And they're going to have to deal with it. And I think really what we need to do is make passing a constitutional amendment on this a priority. It's not going to happen soon. It's very difficult to get a constitutional amendment, but it's important to get people talking about this because birth tourism, literally somebody flying into the country, having a kid, and then leaving with a U.S. passport for that kid, and the kid is raised in communist China in Chinese schools, is preposterous. Yep. Nobody's for that.
No.
But it happens thousands and thousands of times a year.
You know, Mark, so aside from the amendment, I mean, is there anything the Trump administration or Congress can do to reduce the effect of this? I mean, I know there are even billboards up encouraging foreigners to come to America to have their baby.
Yeah, there are things they can do to kind of limit the damage. First, and the administration is doing this, is they're cracking down on the companies that organize these. It isn't organized like a package deal you buy. That's one thing they can do. The other thing they can do, of course, is just reduce illegal immigration so that the longer somebody's here, the more likely it is they're going to have a kid. Get them out to begin with. And the other thing is, and this is a kind of twist on birth tourism that Emma Waters at the Heritage Foundation has kind of uncovered, is that there is surrogacy birth tourism, where they have in vitro fertilization, where the father is in China, and he pays. And there's actually a guy who's had dozens of kids this way, American women to carry the baby, and then when the baby's born in the United States, baby's a U.S. citizen. They're packed up and flown to China to learn about how great Mao Zedong is for the rest of their lives. But they have a U.S. citizen, U.S. passport, and they can come back anytime they want. It's nuts.
And hold office.
Absolutely. Run for president even.
Right.
Because they were born as U.S. citizens.
Yeah, my. One other issue here, and that is the cost of illegal immigration. I saw a Federal Reserve working paper, found that this surge in illegal immigration during the Biden administration triggered the higher home prices, higher rents, and many people are feeling those effects all across the nation. What is that cost of illegal immigration to our nation and to the people as a whole?
This report was not about like the welfare costs, which are significant. In the billions. What this report was about was housing costs, and some people misunderstood what it was. The president said, "Look at this: housing costs have increased 30% or rents 30% because of illegal aliens." That's not what it said. It said that of the increase, and there was an increase, 30% of it was caused by illegal immigration. So that's still pretty significant, quite frankly.
Yes.
And the reason for that is you've got more people and the same number of housing units, and you can't build housing fast enough, especially for the number of people that Biden was letting in. I mean, Biden admitted, at least illegally, we're talking about, not even legal immigrants, illegally, at least 2 million people a year during his term, and maybe more. You can't build housing fast enough for that as a practical matter. And also, the issue there is that it's hard to build housing because of all kinds of, zoning rules and all the rest of it. And immigrants are more likely to go to the very places where it's hard to build more housing, like California.
Yeah.
So there's no way that the kind of mass immigration, illegal immigration that Biden allowed would not increase housing costs and make it more expensive to rent and to buy a house.
Friends, we're opening our phone lines. If you have a question you'd like to ask or a brief comment, Mark Krikorian is with us today. He is the Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies. CIS.org is our website. Our phone number to Crosstalk today is 1-800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. And though we've covered a number of issues today, I know there's so many other issues as it relates to illegal immigration in particular, but we've talked about like the ICE traffic stops and the expedited removals by the Department of Homeland Security, the duration of status change, the impact of the birthright citizenship decision from the Supreme Court. We've talked about non-citizens voting, and yes, the discoveries here in New Jersey just recently admitted to by the Democratic governor there. So again, our number 800-733-9829. And Mark, as you know, we're just over 3 months away from the November election, and I'd like to find out from you, how critical do you see this election as it relates to this matter of illegal immigration?
Well, it's, every election ends up being probably more important than the last one, but the idea of having a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives, especially since the Democrats are increasingly being directed and led by open socialists. And by socialists, I don't just mean economically socialists. They also oppose immigration laws. They want, the woman who's going to be is a congresswoman. She's, won the primary, so she's going to win in Colorado. She specifically said the point of immigration is to bring in more immigrants so more of them can get elected to Congress and they can, undo America's imperialist blah, blah, blah.
Right.
You know what the story is there.
Right.
So this is pretty serious, frankly. If the Republicans at least hold on to the Senate, it will blunt the effect of it, but this could have a real detrimental effect, especially if they take both houses of Congress, could really cripple enforcement of the border. And the only thing I'd add to this, and this is a question for 2028 more than 2026, but do you really think that the Democratic candidates who are likely to be nominated would let in fewer illegal immigrants than Joe Biden did? Of course not.
Yeah. Again, our number 800-733-9829. Let's begin with Charles in Dallas, Texas. Charles, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question about the immigration topic that you guys were talking about. I'm an African-American man, and what puzzles me is what do you consider African-American people? Are we immigrants because we was forcibly brought to the United States? Or how do the guy that's speaking, what do they think about that question? You know, everybody is illegal that's here in America.
Okay.
Because before indigenous people was here before anybody was here.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Mark.
I mean, the fact is that our immigration undermines the job prospects and opportunities for all less skilled Americans, just in general, because wealthier people benefit from immigration. They hire cheaper maids and cheaper lawn service, and working class people are harmed, regardless of what race they are. But disproportionately, immigration harms Black Americans. It just does, and this is something that all Black leaders in the past, I mean, Marcus Garvey, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, A. Philip Randolph, all of them acknowledged that immigration undermined the opportunities for Black Americans. And in fact, Roy Beck, who's an immigration activist, he wrote a book called Back of the Hiring Line, where he kind of went into detail. And one of the things that really struck me was that in the 20s, when immigration was reduced, that's when basically the Great Wave ended. The businessmen in the North, the industrialists, had to find some other source of labor, and so they literally sent recruiters driving through the South, begging people, white and Black, begging them to move north to their factories.
Yeah.
Nobody was doing that before because there was somebody else they could import instead.
Charles, is your question in that your ancestors were brought here to the United States, or brought to this nation against their will? Are they considered illegal immigrants? Is that your question?
That's my question.
Yeah, that's his question. Mark?
No, I mean, look, everybody born here at this point is an American. It doesn't, I mean, honestly, however your ancestors came here is no longer germane.
Right.
And we're all Americans, and we have to base immigration policy on what's good for our countrymen, not what was good in the past or whatever. I mean, immigration policy is about what's good for our grandchildren, not what was good or bad for our grandparents.
Great. Thank you, Charles. Mike is calling from Missouri. Mike, you're on the air.
Yes, I just had a question when you were talking about ICE being arresting criminal illegals, and you mentioned something about auditing businesses for illegal workers. How does one go about applying for something like that?
Well, they haven't done it yet. That's the that's the problem. Is that Tom Homan said this is something he wanted to do to be able to really scale up work-related enforcement and make it hard to keep illegal workers on the payroll, but he wasn't all that clear about whether he'd been given the okay to do that or not. I know he wants to do that. He is a big fan of work-site enforcement, but, there are people in the administration who aren't. The Secretary of Agriculture, the Secretary of Commerce, they're bringing businessmen into the White House to sweet-talk the president about how, well, we need these workers and all this. So, we need more of this kind of work-related enforcement, and I don't know what to tell you about. There's nothing to apply for just yet.
Thank you, Mike, for the call. We're taking a quick break and then come back to more of your phone calls coming in. Our number is 800-733-9829, 1-800-733-9829. Back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. The book of Revelation, chapter 18, describes Babylon as the center of global commerce. Well, guess what, folks? The prime minister of Iraq was just in the Oval Office last week, and on Friday, the Iraqi government, they signed agreements worth $60 billion This comes from American corporations. And guess what they're going to do, folks? They're going to develop all kinds of things related to healthcare, infrastructure, defense, communications. But they're also going to be, enabling Iraq to have its oil reach world markets without having to go through the waters that Iran, has made a choke point. This is amazing, folks. And in fact, it is showing that what's going to happen in Iran is going to allow it to become perhaps one of the biggest producers of oil in the world. Stay tuned. The Bible is true.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. With us today is Mark Krikorian, the Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies. CIS.org is our website. Let's get right back to the phone lines today with your calls. And we have Dwight from Tennessee. Hi, Dwight. You're on the air.
Yes, my question is in regards to whenever you hire someone and you run them through the process in a corporation or company and you do the E-Verify, to where it verifies is this person eligible for work. Why is the government not doing more? Because several times they'll use the same Social Security number to work, multiple illegals will. Why are they not sharing more information to crack down on that so they don't get hired in the first place?
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
I've asked this question myself. First of all, E-Verify is an online system where when you hire somebody and do the IRS and Social Security paperwork, you also check whether they are legally authorized to work, whether the person has told you the truth. It's system for a government system. It works great, but only about half of new hires are screened through it because it's still voluntary, and Congress would have to pass a law to make it mandatory. But as far as your question goes, this is something the IRS and Social Security just don't want to have anything to do with immigration at all. And even now, I've talked to political appointees, and it's like pulling teeth to get these guys to work with ICE. Because, for instance, as the caller said, if there's the same Social Security number that's shown up in 10 different states at the same time, maybe it's legal. Maybe the guy drives around a lot. I don't know, but it's at least worth looking at, you know what I mean, and flagging it. And that's just something that isn't done nearly enough. It needs to be done on scale. In other words, every time a Social Security number shows up, say, 5 times or more within 6-month periods, something like that, that they automatically look into it. That's not what's happening now.
Yeah. Thank you, Dwight.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We've got Kitty next in New Jersey. Hi, Kitty. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I just got a comment about New Jersey with the voter fraud. Not only do they do it in motor vehicles, they also do it in the welfare system with the applications. They ask you if you're a voter or not. And
interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't think that's required by federal law. It may be, but I know it's required that when you get a driver's license, they give you a registration, voter registration form. And it says in little print, you have to be a U.S. citizen. But again, you're the Honduran guy who barely knows English. What do you know?
Yeah. Thank you for the call. And we have Neha in New Jersey as well. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Yes, hi. I have a question about illegal immigrants. The question is how they just enter easily and then they apply for adjustment of status, and then after that they apply for WICS program, Medicaid, and the EBT card. And they use all the benefits when we as a taxpayer pays thousands of dollars every year. And we struggle to have benefits from government, but it's not us. They are taking all of it.
Yeah.
That's the thing people ask a lot. And illegal immigrants in themselves are only eligible for very limited programs, like emergency Medicaid for childbirth, that kind of thing. But most kids in illegal alien families are U.S. born, and they're eligible for all welfare programs. But, of course, if you have an EBT card that you got because of your kid, it's not like the 4-year-old is going to the supermarket and only eating the food. It's a benefit for the whole family. That's how this happens. That's how illegal immigrants have not only a high welfare use rate, they have actually a higher rate of welfare use than legal immigrants. because they're generally poorer and qualify more, but they're getting it on behalf of their kids. That's the way that happens. And, one of the issues in the birthright citizenship case that you mentioned, in fact, the reason the plaintiff in that case brought the lawsuit was because she said if her kid that was going to be born, she was expecting, if that kid wasn't a U.S. citizen, he wouldn't be able to get welfare, and that would cost them more money. That was the whole basis for the lawsuit, which is crazy.
Yeah. Thank you for raising that, Neha. Bob in Northeast Maryland, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you. Mark, I just want to confirm your very first caller made a comment about how do you know ancestor-wise whether he is considered a citizen, and your answer was you were born here. So maybe that should put that to rest about birth citizenship. When it comes to immigration, why the scare tactic of all the immigrants are going to be put in and let in 2028 if a Democrat gets elected? That's just the Republican Party is scare tactic after scare tactic after scare tactic.
Okay.
Basically,
Bob, let me have our guest respond to that. Go ahead, Mark.
I mean, look, maybe I'll be wrong. I'm happy to be proven wrong. But if the Democrats end up winning in 28, but President, then candidate Biden said that they were making sure they were putting guardrails, as he put it, to make sure that we didn't have 2 million people show up at the border. Well, literally, that is what happened, and they kept it up for 4 years. So there is every reason to expect that would happen again, especially considering the even further radicalization of the Democratic elected officials in the past couple of years. So, look, I might be wrong. I can't say that is what's going to happen, but there sure as heck is every reason to believe that's what would happen.
Bob?
So do you believe that it's not going in the complete opposite direction of what we're doing now with this administration?
What do you mean? What's opposite direction?
The opposite direction of no immigrants whatsoever. This country was built on immigrants.
Tell you what, we're down to 45 seconds.
Right.
Trump doesn't...
Even under President Trump, there is still significant, very high levels, too high levels, in my opinion, of immigration. But to change that, Congress would have to change the law. Illegal immigration is definitely down, and it should be zero. So that's actually a good sign.
But President Trump is not against immigration, legal immigration.
No, but the question is how much and who and how do we run it? Those are the questions we need to really be asking.
Bob, thank you very much. And Mark, I know you've got a July 28th upcoming session. Who Gets to Be a Citizen? That's going to be streamed. Is that correct?
Yes, it's going to be streamed, and we're going to have people from our partner think tanks in other countries, in Israel and Hungary and Paris and France, talking about sort of generally both our policies here in the U.S. and policies in other countries.
That's coming up July 28th, and friends, you can get more info at CIS.org, CIS.org. Mark, as always, thanks for joining us today on the broadcast.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
And that's Mark Krikorian. He's Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies. Check out their website. Watch their postings and stay abreast of what's taking place in our nation. God bless you, friends. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.